All right, fantastic. We're recording. So today's topic is very interesting. Really looking forward for what we're going to discuss today. It's going to be about the situation in the UK, UK and possibly some international politics. Our guest is the former MEP and the presenter of the We Need to Talk About show on GB News. Normally it happens Monday to Friday, 2 to 3 p.m. Please welcome our guest, Alex Phillips. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Here we are in the middle of a heat wave, right? I'm not
Yes.
not normally dressed like this, but we're all sweltering, just trying to survive. My hands are clammy. I've got my cucumber water right here. I'm falling asleep, but it's nice. It's nice to actually be moaning about the heat and not the rain and the cold.
Yeah, actually, that's a better problem to have. I would say, but everybody, like you can see from the street, everybody's like exhausted. I'm washing my face every 2 minutes just to just to freshen up. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think the UK, the infrastructure is not prepared for this heat, so they better do something about it very soon.
I know we need to paint all our buildings white, make smaller windows, get rid of the rubbish in our attics, and really start to think about how we cope with these changes of temperature we're starting to see.
I think the AC industry is gonna boom. Yeah, next year probably if this
Yeah,
carries on. One
blinds
hundred
as
percent.
well. When you go
Yeah,
abroad, these amazing blinds, these shutters that come across, and they make everything completely black at night, so you're not woken up by the light, and keep everything cool. That's all I can think about when I go to bed. How much I want those shutters.
yeah, 100%. But I'm pretty sure next year we'll find all of those, and everybody's gonna buy those, install AC in every room, because it is unbearable without it. It is unbearable. But today we're going to talk about a lot of exciting stuff, things that are happening currently or happened recently. We're going to talk about the situation with Boris Johnson and the Prime Minister resignation and who's next and all of that, about Brexit, possibly your thoughts on the Scottish referendum. And if we have time, probably the what's happening in the US when it comes to LGTBQ in schools, and would we see the same issue happening in the UK? We'll talk about that as well. But let's start just if we can introduce everybody about your background and how did you end up doing what you do now.
Blimey. Well, it's been a big circle actually, because from a very young age I wanted to be a journalist, and so I worked hard to kind of fulfill that destiny. So chose to do literature and philosophy at university. Had a year out where I sort of did some journalism training abroad in Ghana, India, and China. Then came back, went to journalism school, and embarked on a career. But it wasn't long into my career that I met a charismatic politician who was sort of semi-well-known called Nigel Farage, and he asked me to go and work with him.
All right.
My response was, no, it's okay, thanks, mate. Then I went to the BBC and suddenly found myself with itchy feet. Didn't find that I fit in particularly well in the corridors of RMT, a little bit too tied up and moving at a glacial speed. And I happened to cover Nigel again. The first time around had been European elections. The second time around was Welsh elections.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he extended the offer. And I was ripe by that point. I was ready to do something different and felt kind of inspired by the message. I had become skeptical of the European Union while I was living in Africa. I'd been working in Ghana and saw the fallout in the media of the EU trying to negotiate with the West African Economic Union over tariffs, and Ghanaians were up in arms essentially about what was not a level playing field and would cause much harm to their economy with the bonfire of tariffs, and it was not being reported in the West. And I also began to see the start of predatory mercantilism by China, and had started to develop my own geopolitical viewpoint at the tender age of 21, and leaving the EU fit in with that. So I said to Nigel, okay, I'm ready. So I went to work with him. That would have been 2009. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history. We campaigned hard for 7 years, had the referendum, won the referendum, then there was all the tussle over that for another 4 years. I became a Brexit Party MEP to finally see the thing through. That was done. Then there was a pandemic, and then GB News was established, and I find myself back at the beginning on television again.
Oh, fantastic. So you actually went through a lot of different avenues in media and politics, and you've like literally went through a lot of like departments and issues and stories and topics and all of that, and then you ended up obviously doing what you're doing now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And so did you support also Nigel with the Brexit campaign and all of that?
During the actual referendum campaign, I had taken leave from politics after a grueling general election campaign and 8 years on the front line. And then I went to work in Africa running presidential campaigns over there before coming home
Mm.
and realizing that, even though I'd campaigned hard to get the referendum and voted to leave, came home and realized that the will of the people had not been realized. So there was still some work to do. So back to the grindstone and helped set up the Brexit Party.
Exactly, exactly. Right. So I think that could lead us to the Brexit topic. But just before that, I really want to talk about what's happening right now with the prime minister resigning and all of that. So I've looked at some of the candidates. I've watched a panel on a TV channel the other day between five candidates, and some of them are interesting, some of them are not. But what would you say you're looking for in the next prime minister?
I think what's interesting is the focus of right now is the economy, and that's what all these candidates are being asked. And the outrider, I suppose, is Rishi Sunak, who's is the just the recently outgoing chancellor, having quit his position over fallout with Boris Johnson on the approach to take. Boris Johnson wanted to slash taxes, and Rishi Sunak sees that as fanning the flames of inflation. Economics is an art form, so perhaps the jury is out on this. It certainly would have been a popular move, if not a populist move, to cut taxes. But Rishi Sunak's sticking to his guns, and that's been the focus of this campaign. And it's an urgent situation, without a doubt. The approach by the Treasury is going to be critical, and I don't think we've remotely seen the worst of the economic fallout from war in Ukraine. There's a high probability that Russia could turn off gas to Europe this winter. We're in a heat wave right now, so we're not really feeling the heightened energy prices. We're not putting our radiators on, but come winter when we really need that, especially if gas is being turned off to Germany, it's going to have a hugely distortive effect in the energy markets, and it will be very, very difficult. But this comes back to a bigger thing, and the bigger thing is, why is this happening? It's happening because we've completely mismanaged the situation with Russia. We're mismanaging the situation with China. Russia's about to build a gas pipeline through Mongolia to China, so they don't really care if Russia's going to buy their gas, and if the UK and Europe's going to buy their gas in the future.
Definitely.
And I think for decades now, we have been failing to really look at the bigger picture geopolitically. Regimes like China and Russia have long-term plans. China especially, they're not thinking about next year. They're thinking about the next decade and the decade after that. And the West has very much stopped doing this. It started to pander to instantaneous results, which is why it's gone down the route of buying stuff from China by the shipping container, and not really thinking about what we're doing, where that money's going, and what, how we're emboldening a regime with the capitalism it supposedly rejects, but not making sure that it employs a global rules-based order, diplomacy, democracy, and is on our side. And I think that there's a big concern now that the axis of power is shifting and the West has gone into defeatist mode. So for me, personally, I think it's time we had a long-term plan. Yes, the economic outlook of the next few months is critical, but if we don't sort out this bigger picture stuff, quite frankly, we're doomed. And to me, there's really only one candidate who's talking about that, and that would be Tom Tugendhat. But I'm sure by the time this podcast goes on air, that he will probably be out of the race. So let's hope he gets a front position at least.
From the candidates I've seen, him and Penny raised some interest in, for me, like some policies that I would be interested in. Some of the other ones, not really. But yeah, I think he would be good. A lot of people are saying that he might not make it. I hope he actually goes to the next stage. But we'll have to see. Would you say that also with the current climate, with the Russian war and all of that, and everybody's talking about defense and all of that, do you think you would need a leader that also tackles this with way more authority than what happened before, or something
Yeah.
like that?
I think authority does count for a lot, but actually I think the biggest problem with Boris wasn't so much authority, because in a way he was disarming and he was memorable. So he had status
Mm,
internationally. He actually did. I think somehow what we're looking at now are candidates who, in that G7 family photograph are not really going to stand out. Whereas at least Boris was actually kind of a towering figure on the international stage. The problem with Boris actually was he didn't have joined up thinking. He didn't have a cohesive plan. If anything, Boris has been part of a cohort of politicians in the Conservative Party and in positions of power who have opened the door to a heck of a lot of foreign investment that's now becoming incredibly toxic. You look at dirty money swilling around around London, Russian dirty money. You look at the amount that the Saudis have bought and the Chinese have bought in terms of housing and taking over businesses and property and core infrastructure. And he's been part of a cohort of politicians who've wanted to make money quick and have sold off vital aspects of the state. And we're now stuck in a situation where it's hard to extract ourselves from that. So really my big problem with Boris is that not so much about the parties and the frippery, but more that he didn't have a cohesive ideology at all. No one really knew what he believed.
Yeah. I mean, actually, this is a great segue to my next question. Some people say he didn't have the chance to actually act on his policies because the moment he jumped in, he dealt with COVID for 2 years, and then straight after that, the war. So there are some people that I read that they really believe that the guy didn't actually show everything that he had in mind. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that. And the other thing is, look, while I'm saying Boris didn't have cohesive policy, he didn't. While I think that he really did things, that it showed a lightweightness in leadership that you just can't have at the top. The problem is, you're right, and having a prime minister with his backs against the rope, having to make big decisions is actually good. It's a prime minister who's had 2 years bumbling around in crisis situations and messing things up, who all of a sudden has to put it together for the sake of the country and has to focus. And we never really got the opportunity to see whether he could. But the Conservative Party love regicide. They've done this before. I mean, the last two prime ministers before Boris Johnson, well, all actually thinking about it, all the prime ministers before Boris Johnson have essentially been toppled from power, as opposed to losing power due to the and it's something the Conservative Party seem to really enjoy doing. There are very powerful forces backing the Conservative Party. There are, powerful donors, business interests, and the time had come where they thought that Boris had outlived their purpose or wasn't ever going to meet their needs. And so, he's essentially, he didn't resign really, did he? He was pushed. It become untenable. There had been so many resignations coordinated to bring down the government, and he had to go. And in many respects, I've never been a big fan of Boris Johnson as a prime minister. As London mayor on some level, maybe. As a human to go to the pub with, probably without a doubt. But the problem is, they committed the act before they really had a clear idea of what they were going to do to succeed him.
And I think also a lot of people, when they look at politician, they look at the personality and the policies. I don't know. For me, all what's important for me are the policies and how this guy is acting to situation, what his reactions. And I think a lot of people slag him off and all of that. But I think you need to just disattach this from that, and probably when you judge a politician, I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think personality plays a part?
Massively. I really think personality plays a huge part. Back in the day, it didn't. When we got our news from reading newspapers and a bulletin at 6:00, and that was it. So we just saw clips, sound bites, and read the odd headline. Then that's different. But we live in a 24/7 digital world now where go viral, where we live in personality politics. You just look at this leadership race, it looks like US Open primaries. So you have to be charismatic, and not just here, but that person's got to echo on the world stage. And you look at all of the leaders now of the West, and they are personality politicians, and it does indeed count for a lot. And Boris Johnson had that in bagfuls, and that I actually do think is in the modern age, an extremely useful weapon. You look at the British response to Ukraine, and look how much Britain is adored by the Ukrainian people, and the very special relationship that grew between Boris Johnson and Volodymyr Zelensky. And I don't think that's to be scoffed at. Like I said, he was a titan. Everybody in every country knew who Boris Johnson was. And in many respects, it's better to be notorious than not known at all. And my worry is that we're following Boris Johnson up for all of his faults with a character that's going to be far more vacuous. And as a result, people might take that as a symbol that the UK is on the decline. We got rid of this big character, this huge figurehead in our politics, and there's a risk we're going to replace Boris with somebody who essentially looks rather bureaucratic.
Yeah, and this is actually what I was gonna ask is in the current climate with Russia, and like in the heat of the situation with the economy, the Russia, we just got out of COVID, and tons of other things. Do you think it was the right move right now to push Boris to resign? My background is business, right? And in business, when you have a crisis like this and all of that, the last thing you want to do is fire your CFO or fire your CTO, or you know what I mean, because you're already dealing with stuff and you've got like overheads and KPIs you need to reach, otherwise you run out of business. So what do you think about the idea that this is the wrong time to do it? And do you think Putin's sitting there laughing at us?
Of course he is. He loves it. I mean, we were the vanguard of resistance, to be honest. And now look, we barely talk about Ukraine in the headlines in the UK anymore because we're so busy talking about who's going to actually run the country. We've got a deficit of government here. So how are we supposed to lead the way in facing up this tyrannical regime? It's played right into his hands. And the question you have to ask yourself is, no, it isn't the right time to get rid of the leader. So why has it happened now? Which vested interests, which powerful people behind the scenes have decided that this is the time that he has to go? I'm not claiming a conspiracy theory or why. It could be business interests saying we're about to hit an economic crisis and this prime minister is not the one to steady the ship because he rules by opinion polling. That's one suggestion. He wanted to push for tax cuts, which some believe would actually hugely fuel inflation and make the economy worse off in the long run. Maybe that's why. That was Rishi Sunak's his reason given for stepping down, which of course propagated the stampede that followed, that then led to Boris being ousted from power. Or is there something else besides? I mean, who knows? Politics is a far murkier business than most people give credit for, and there's always things going on behind the scenes with people that very few others would even be able to name. Who have far higher stakes than perhaps we understand. So it does seem peculiar to me, the exact timing of this, but it happened so quickly. It had been threatened from as far back as February. That is when they said to him, go or you will be removed. So it's about 6 months longer than the powers that be behind the Conservative Party wanted, but they've wanted him gone.
I think strategically it doesn't make sense that he leaves now, and we get another problem on top of the multiple problems we have now, another issues to deal with. Strategically, it doesn't make sense. So that's why I'm asking. I want to see your thoughts about this.
This is why when you look at the various leadership candidates, there's one in particular who's doing incredibly well, who I think is there probably as the patsy to higher powers, somebody who is far more easily manipulated by people who want to be running the government from behind the scenes. And that character is cosplaying Margaret Thatcher.
Gotcha.
And she doesn't appear to me to, if you listen to Westminster gossip and sort of insinuations that people are making, she does seem to be a candidate that is the front for other people who want to get their person in position so they can pull strings from the shadows.
Makes sense. So there is a chance, or there is talk out there that this could be influenced somehow by other sides, really.
I mean, look, all of Western politics is influenced by other sides right now. You look at the discourse in America, that is largely being sown by troll farms and bots and,
100%,
it is contributing to creating social discontent. You look at what's going on in France, and that's, Macron was in an incredibly difficult situation very recently. Italy, you've got big issues in government there. Yes, there's a cost of living crisis, but I think, in a modern day world of fast-paced digital media, echo chambers and algorithms, there are ways in which those people who wish to do us harm can have undue influence that perhaps we don't see above surface level.
Makes sense. Do you think I believe actually when I look at Boris and all of that stuff, especially after he made his, last speech, I think all in all, he did have the UK's best intention at heart. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he's an interesting character, Boris. And I think initially Boris wants to be loved. He's just a boy who wants everyone to love him. He wants the affirmation. Always first. But I think he's not a bad man. I think he really did have a sense of duty towards the country, and did really, maybe because he wants the affirmation, want to create a legacy. I genuinely think that's... and that when he made that resignation speech, there's a part of me that felt a little bit heartbroken that, like you said, he never really got the chance to create a legacy. But he will be remembered for steering the country through some difficult times. But we'll never really know what Johnson's Britain would have been.
Yeah, that's exactly. And to be honest with you, this is what when it struck me is when I was watching it, and like he turned around and went back to the house. I was like, man, I think this guy didn't have the chance that he wanted, but it is what it is. It's done. And now we just have to look at the other candidates. But as you said, Tom is good. What's your thoughts about Penny?
I don't know. I really don't know, because at the moment she's mired so much in briefings and counter briefings that I can't tell the wood from the trees with Penny. I can't tell whether she's what she reports she is or what her enemies say that she is. So in that respect, there's a in politics to think no smoke without fire. But I mean, for that reason of having that question mark hanging over her, she wouldn't be my first choice.
Gotcha. Yeah. And when it comes to Boris actually leaving, when would that happen? Because they said everybody's talking about October.
Yeah, everyone's talking about October, 7 weeks' time or something like that. That might be early, maybe September. And the new leader would be appointed at Conservative Party conference. But, if the Conservative Party wants to shuffle him out before, then they'll find ways of doing it. But they need to execute this leadership contest first and do it in a way that doesn't look like a stitch-up.
100%. So let's talk some Brexit. So when it comes to Brexit, the way I look at it is you talk to people, you talk to civilians and all of that. You've got people who are with it, people who are not with it. But the way I look at it is that the situation now is we've got Brexit going on. These are the cards that we've got in our hands. You know what I mean? And the best move from here is how would you capitalize on this current situation? Whether people like it or not like it, but this is the situation. How would you capitalize on the cards that you've got in your hand to obviously make the UK compete in the marketplace, be dominant in different avenues when it comes to global competition, and all of that stuff. So what do you think are the pros that the Brexit wanted to achieve, and the cons? And do you think we're doing any of the pros right now?
Right. So we got Brexit done, but we've not done anything with Brexit, basically. And the thing is, I think what a lot of people fail to understand. First of all, actually, what I should point out is everyone said when we left the European Union, the sky would fall in, there'd be economic apocalypse, and the country would be brought to its knees. That evidently has not happened. And there are elements of our sovereignty and independence that have already come through. And you just have to look at things such as the vaccine rollout, where we didn't join the EU's joint procurement scheme, and look at the way we've been able to respond to Ukraine, where our sanctions aren't tied in with having to make joint decisions at EU level. We've been able to be far more responsive. So there are ways in which the UK being an independent nation is proven already. But beyond those which have happened as a cause of circumstance, no one's really used any of the cards dealt to them. And that's because you really need to look at the small print of the deal that was done. And the deal that was done actually committed the UK to following EU standards in perpetuity in many, many areas. On the surface of it, this oven-ready deal that gives us independence sort of does, but there's a lot of things that we're unable to do, and a lot of those are hinged on the Northern Ireland Protocol. And this is why it's so important. This isn't just about being able to send Colin the caterpillars from a factory in Manchester over to Belfast. This is about the fact that the EU used the device of the Northern Ireland border in order to try and lock the whole of the UK in regulatory orbit around the EU. So it couldn't diversify on certain regulations, and it couldn't undercut on things such as taxation in order to compete directly with the EU. And the EU very strategically said, okay, we're not going to budge when it comes to Northern Ireland. Either Northern Ireland is essentially still part of the EU, or the whole of the UK is still part of the EU, calling our bluff, thinking that the UK would say, well, look, we're not going to sign off, a big chunk of the United Kingdom over to Brussels power, and the rest of it follows different rules. But, that is in effect what we have done. And so now we're in this really ugly and complex situation where the border is now down the middle of the UK itself. And it needs to be, actually, it doesn't need to be unpicked. It just needs to be macheted. We need to turn around and go, don't care about breaking international law. The UK is a sovereign territory, suck it, and just crack on with acting as an independent nation. And I don't think anybody really has the fortitude to make that call. Liz Truss says she would, credit where credit's due. I think Liz Truss, when it comes to these matters, is the most strident candidate. She soon acts a bit more cautious about not wanting to alienate and upset Brussels, which is a stupid approach, frankly. Brussels is never worried about being cautious over not alienating and upsetting anybody else, least of all us. You just remember the way they behaved during the vaccine rollout, when they suddenly enacted Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol to stop the UK being able to send vaccines over to Northern Ireland, and started confiscating entire consignments being made in India that actually were destined for places like Papua New Guinea, not even for Britain. I mean, they behaved in an absolutely, unhinged manner. And I think Britain needs to be assertive and say, people voted to leave, and we're leaving. This is what we're doing. And the things that could be rolled out immediately with such an assertive response would be changing VAT. First of all, taking VAT off fuel, which is something we can do now we've left the EU, and would cut prices at the pump, which I think is essential. Also, corporation tax. That's something else that the EU expects to be homogenised in line with their, business taxes, so they don't suddenly get a flight of businesses from one part of the EU to the other. We should just slash corporation tax and say, invest here, move your factories here, move your businesses here. There are other areas where we are beginning to talk about using those benefits, such as creating free ports. And a lot of these things will take a while to be fully realised. But basically, until we can sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol, we will always be connected by a strange umbilical cord to EU regulations. And unless we show real clear conviction over that, then I'm afraid it doesn't really set the right tone for an independent nation.
No, 100%, 100%. I think with the current, tying this to who's going to be the next candidate when it comes to Brexit, I think the things that I'm looking at, I want the UK to kind of restore its dominant name again. I really believe in the UK, and I think that we can do better than what we're doing right now. So I think we should capitalize on this opportunity. Maybe that's why I'm the person that I'm looking forward to, be a leader. I want them to look at this and be like, okay, we're gonna incentivize, for example, entrepreneurship and investment here. We're gonna, support innovation. Maybe we're gonna select 4 or 5 different avenues that we're, for example, number 3, number 4 at, and we're gonna aim to be number 1 at, just to become more dominant globally. Or anything, just so that the North Star of the plan for the UK to be more competitive, because I think we kind of with everything that happens, if you look like at different world rankings and stuff, I think we could do way better, just because we're not maybe thinking about competing enough in the marketplace. I think we need to restore this competitive spirit, especially in the public. Like when I speak personally to my friends and stuff, I think that competitive spirit is a little bit not there. So I think I need someone to kind of restore that, push people to do better, incentivize small businesses and all of that. I think one of the amazing things that can improve the economy is make it easy as easy as possible for people to open small businesses and kind of incentivize high salary. Like don't slap people who gets high salary, don't give them a higher tax bracket, because then people wouldn't bother to improve themselves and increase their value in the marketplace. I think I want someone to be like, okay, anybody who earns from 0 to X, for example, you don't pay tax, but everybody 30K above, you're all flat percentage. I think for me that's my thinking goes, is that this would be kind of the best way to incentivize people to go higher and higher and then build more innovation and all of that. That's like my rant about it. But this is kind of what I'm looking for. And when someone comes in, become a leader and capitalizes on the Brexit opportunity. I don't know. What's your comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, a flat taxation policy is a very bold move. It can really only be done in times where I think you've got fertile grounds in order to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Our debt to GDP ratio is pretty scary. And we need to make sure that we can sign off all the huge amounts of money we paid during the pandemic. I mean, the problem is, that was pretty much communist policy during the pandemic. And sometimes the best medicine for communism is more communism, or actually having to cold turkey a country off the drug of handouts, which is far more difficult and creates instant economic pain. But, I'm with you on Britain being assertive. I think the problem is ideologically, and I don't really know where it began, but Britain has a fifth column of people in it who keep telling the national psyche that it is somehow shameful to want to put the word great in front of Britain, that being ambitious, being assertive is somehow wrong. And I think our competitors often throw this against us. A lot of other European countries and even the left wing of American politics talk about English arrogance or English exceptionalism, this idea that, the British, they think they're the best in the world. And we started, looking at ourselves through this prism, when in fact, empirically, you look at the number of universities we've got in the world top 100, you look at the amount of innovations and inventions that this country has made, you look at our the role we played in two world wars on the continent, and not necessarily directly affecting us at the time we engaged. You just have to look at the empire we once had. I mean, gosh, I'm not allowed to talk about that anymore, but 1/3 of the world's surface. And we have a duty of care to those nations who were our subjects. But now, as a result of that, have a common system of democracy, have a common language, and represent a huge diversity of different cultures and different forms of commerce. But
I actually met people that believe Britain saved the world via Churchill from what was going to happen.
It's always a hot topic of debate. You say that. You say that sort of mainland Europe, that, if it wasn't for Britain, they always can't wait to turn around and say, it was America.
Right.
But, without sort of gazing back historically and trying to sort of point out then what should we do forward with the confidence that we shouldn't feel afraid to talk about our excellence in the future. And I think this is where we've gone horribly wrong, because we seem to be self-flagellating over mistakes we've made in the past, as all nations have done. Ours no worse or no better than others. And we allow our detractors to take the upper hand by not necessarily really embracing the capabilities that we do have. For a small island, a population of 65 million, we punch way above our weight. We're the fifth largest economy on earth, still.
100%.
Our language is the lingua francum of the world. Our culture is known around the world. Our prime minister is known around the world. Our queen is known around the world. It's a pretty exceptional achievement for a tiny island that half of the world top 10 universities are in the UK, and a third of the top 100, over a third of the top 100 in the UK. We are a phenomenally powerful nation, and I think that people try and contain us. They try and cut off our legs so we can't run. What we've got to do is learn how to run and not let people do that, and certainly not do it to ourselves. And I think that we've become quite defeatist. And, to the extent that people are embarrassed to fly the flag. I mean, what's that about? It's insane.
100%. And I want to stay on this topic just a little bit because I'm very passionate about it. And why I'm passionate about it is I came to the UK 2013, right? And so it's been what? It's been like almost 10 years. And so now I'm half British, half Syrian, right? Now in Syria, we're a very patriotic country. Like the what you're as patriotic for Syria as Americans are patriotic for America. It's a big thing there. So when I came here, although the international stats of the UK coming in from the outside, I didn't see that spirit here. And the more and more I got, I merged with the social fabric, and I've made like, friends and all of that, and relationships and all of that, and I've become, I've joined the social fabric and became all of that. I started to feel a little bit sad that I'm not seeing that. Like, I don't see the UK flags around as much on the Jubilee Day that happened. When did that happen? A couple of months ago or something. Everybody had it. UK flags and everything. Everywhere, and everybody celebrated. And I was like, this is the first time since I came here that I've seen this spirit. And I find it very sad that, as you said, and I'm very passionate about this topic because I want to see the UK become number one in like 10 different avenues, right? But I found it very sad that people are embarrassed to be proud being British. People are not embarrassed. I don't think they're embarrassed. I think it's, as you said, it's there's a stigma there. You know what I mean? It's like as if you're evil if you do that, or you're not politically correct or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think when the public as a unity think like that, the competitive spirit goes away, and I find that's a little bit sad. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it is sad. You've got to ask yourself why that's happened, when did it begin, and who's running that sort of narrative. And this is where you have to look at why there is a fifth column in society who wants Britain to denigrate itself. I think the other thing is, though, that there's something about the British mentality that is naturally stiff upper lip and a bit humble. You look across the pond to America, where they have a lot of this faux chest thumping, salute the flag, and think it's all a bit insincere, really. And the British, when we do have Jubilee, and we keep our monarchy, I think, for this reason, as a linchpin of our cultural fabric, that we do like coming together on those moments, but we don't mind hiding our light under the bushel, in other times. But like you said, that's very different. Showing a modicum of modesty is very different to the self-flagellation that started happening in recent years. And it's being driven by a sort of academic viewpoint that's become increasingly popularized. It's not the thought or feeling of many people in the country, but it does shout the loudest. And, we're seeing this increasingly in America too. And it's, it's tearing society apart. It's pushing ideology.
100%.
Trying to hold us back. And by us, I mean the UK. I mean, elements of the American progressive elements of their society. And, I can't speak for other countries, but I'm certain it's happening across the West. And
oh, yeah.
being aided and abetted by those who want to see us fall. Of that, I'm certain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, final thoughts on that point. I hope, that, if there is a spectrum, being like on one side is like excessive, unhealthy, when it comes to patriarchy, and then on the other side is like zero of that. I hope like we kind of like reach a balance, because I think we're tilting to this way. And I think right now, because we have Brexit, I think right now we need everybody to be in, I don't know, without it sounds a little bit corny, but I want like everybody to be like, okay, to believe that the UK can be number one in a lot of stuff, because
I mean, really, wasn't Brexit a manifestation of the fact that the underbelly of Britain really still does have pride in its country and does have confidence in its country? That this isn't the thought processes of the blue-collar workers and the backbone of Britain. They do believe Britain to be great, and they do have confidence in our nation, but it's almost a trendy viewpoint of those people who sadly hold the levers of power. But Brexit was a manifestation of self-confidence, without a doubt. So we shouldn't lose our spirit entirely, because if we really were a defeated and defeatist nation, that would not
exactly.
have happened. And if the elites tried to stop it. So this is our problem in this country. There is a cohort of people who,
The loud minority, you say, like when it comes to ideology.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I don't know. I hope I hope everything gets better from that side. I just want to talk about a couple more points. What's your? This is very controversial, but I really want to bring it up. What's your thoughts on the second Scottish referendum?
oh, well, they shouldn't have it. I mean, look, first of all, it's ridiculous to say you had a once in a generation referendum back in 2014. It's time for another one right now. Also, if you really want to aid and abet Vladimir Putin, let's talk about ripping the UK into pieces at this moment in time. I mean, it's
100%.
Nicola Sturgeon knows she can't even win it. So it's just a massive distraction to shore up her own popularity. And believe me, if we called her bluff and the referendum happened and Scotland, happened to decide to go independent, you would not see a leader retire as fast as she would to some cottage in the Highlands to write her autobiography and shirk the responsibility of the mess that she had made. I don't think there's any genuine will on her part. She has no genuine plan. This is all about affirmation and making a noise and getting attention because it's what shores up her votes. I mean, she's the Scottish National Party. It's her only reason for existence, and she's in coalition in Holyrood. She's driving the Scottish economy into the ground. But, the sad thing is, I think there's probably a growing number of people in England who say, well, fine, let's get rid of Scotland then. We give them more per capita from the Exchequer than we give to the English or the Northern Irish or the Welsh. And frankly, all they do is seem to cause a headache under Nicola Sturgeon. So, but that's quite sad. I think, look, at the end of the day, I think if this was put to a ballot, it would go the same way as last time, if not the margins tipping even more in favour of the United Kingdom staying resolute. But like you're saying about the toppling of Boris Johnson at this moment in time, it really isn't the moment to be having this conversation. So
Putin is having such a lovely time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, isn't it? We're doing all this madness right now.
But why do they want it? Is there like when they pitch this idea, what's they're pitching for? Because I've read somewhere that they want to be like Scandinavia.
Independence is different to different people, isn't it? But if the whole mess over the Northern Ireland border was difficult, what on earth's going to happen if Scotland gets independent? It's got huge amounts of debt it needs to pay off. It's got it owes, as part of the Exchequer previously, it owes a huge amount to UK pensions. It clearly cannot run itself. It would have to tax itself. It would have to sort out its own currency. I don't see why it should peg itself to sterling. If it wants to join the EU, I don't think economically it fulfills the criteria to be able to do that. So it's a feeling, isn't it? It's an emotion, and that's what's sold to people. But it's an emotion that, if realised, it'd be insane. It'd be insane, and it would take years to figure out the detail of how that could be executed. Years of distraction. When you look at it, the Union of the United Kingdom has been around for centuries, and it's far more complex to extract Scotland from that than it is to take the UK out of the EU, which has been a 50-year-long relationship. And many things we weren't part of. We weren't part of the Schengen Acquis with fully open borders. We weren't part of the single currency. Extracting the UK from the EU was one thing. Extracting Scotland from the UK, I mean, it's sort of microsurgery. It would be near impossible.
I have a couple of thoughts on that, and it's very interesting that you said it wouldn't meet the requirement to join the EU, because I thought this is actually the number one reason, and this is not just the number one reason, the 90% reason why they want to do it. So that would be very interesting if it is a fact that, as you said, they can't join. Then what's the point?
Well, exactly. And you have to have a certain debt to GDP ratio, certain commitments made on your economy, and so on and so forth. And you've got to apply to join and then go through the accession process. And I don't think that, it's not going to be an immediate thing. Scotland would have to make a whole lot of economic reforms in order to meet the UK standards as an independent nation. As part of the UK, then fine, it's got the strength, it's got the economic strength to be ushered into the EU. But as an independent nation, I mean, why would it want that? Why would it want to be?
I don't understand. I think I also read they really want to copy what Scandinavia did. They want to be Norway or Sweden or.
But the thing is, when it comes to certain policies, Scotland has a huge amount of devolution as it is. I mean, what more do they want? And it's not necessarily working for Scotland. When you look at the metrics, they're not some sort of hugely prosperous country when there's a vast amount of policy which is devolved to Scotland. When you look at health, they're the sick man of Europe. I mean, clearly where they can make their own decisions, they're not making very good ones.
From an authority perspective, do you think it should be allowed? My friend lives in Spain, and he was telling me Catalonia wanted to have a referendum from Spain, like obviously years ago, and it didn't work out. They wanted to do another one. Then Spain said, "No, you had your chance." Do you think this should be the same way this should be handled? Because I read, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was that sort of, Catalonia did hold some sort of unofficial referendum, didn't it? And then the Spanish rejected it. And I'm not an expert on the nature of Spanish politics, but the point is there was a perfectly legal referendum that did take place in Scotland in not just living memory, but in the last decade. Wasn't it that long ago? So I have to do it again now. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I've read that Penny would not allow it if she became, under any circumstances, says here, if she became PM.
I don't think I don't even think anyone from the Labour Party would. And this is the thing, Nicola Sturgeon knows that. She's saber rattling for attention.
Yeah. I think so as well, because I tried to look at the pros and the cons in the pitch, and I didn't see anything viable. So I think it's just, I don't know. As you said, I mean, I haven't researched her very much. I researched the actual, pitch about it, and I didn't see anything compelling really. So let's talk about one final topic very, very quickly, which is the LGTBQ in schools. Obviously, it's getting bigger and bigger by the minute. The issue that US is having when it comes to LGTBQ being pushed on children under 18 in schools. And literally day by day, you hear more stories, and both sides are getting bigger, right? So it's not like it's leaning to one side. I do believe that this is just how the media is portraying. I do believe most people, just using common sense. And I do believe that once politics touches your pocket or your kids, you're like, hold on a minute. I mean, this is like, these do not affect these two things, type of thing. Do you think what's happening there is happening in the UK? And if not, do you think it might do?
Yeah, well, we import culture from the United States, and look, the LGBTQ and trans rights are just part of an even bigger problem, which is the way society is changing rapidly without checks or balances, and no one's even trying to put the brakes on, and no one's even allowed to talk about putting the brakes on. And we're not just talking about changes in gay rights, trans rights. We've become a far more permissive society. We've got a society drenched in pornography. The internet goes about completely unchecked as this sort of virtual parallel universe, which then seeps back down into reality. And values that have held together humanity for the last 2 millennia are being not just eroded, but chucked on a bonfire in the matter of months. And that should be frightening to absolutely everybody. And we're being silenced, and we're not being allowed to talk about it. And people take the side of this so-called progression and demonize the basic tenets that are in most world religions, those of monogamy, matrimony, family life. And these are the things that, even basic biology is under attack. These are the things that don't just cohesively hold a society together. They actually make sure the human race can continue. So we have a major issue right now with what is going on around the digitized world. And America made the monster, because America invented social media, which has allowed these things to go about unchecked. Only America can really regulate social media, because pretty much all of the main companies exist in Silicon Valley. And the weapon that America's made, it's holding to its own head, and its enemies are holding to its head as well. So the LGBTQ arguments that are taking place, the polarizing debates that are taking place, just one part of a far bigger picture, and all of it should deeply worry everybody.
What's more worrying, even more than that, the fact that the censorship culture is getting bigger and bigger, and it's feeding that, and it's letting that. I think whenever you can't argue about one or on, like for example, let's take Brexit for example. If socially between your friends and your classmates and your work colleagues, if you, let's say, support one of them, and you're not politically correct, you kind of feel like silence and all of that stuff. So you probably not portray your opinion, or you might hide them and all of that. I think once we reach this type of social structure, that's a red flag that we need to look back and be like, okay, there are certain topics that we cannot talk about. Why? And not just one topic or two topics. And it becomes literally, it's either this way or you're an evil person, this way or you're an evil person. And I think that by itself is very scary. The censorship, political correctness, and all of that. I think you should not be labeled as evil if you believe one thing or another, and the debate should be open. And I think this is what's scary.
It is scary, but also it again is a tiny minority. If you get outside of London and get off Twitter, not that many people in the UK are actually on Twitter. It's a very tiny platform. 20% of it is bots, as it turns out, after Elon Musk's due diligence. If you get off those echo chambers and go to a pub in Hartlepool, people don't care about this stuff. They're not talking about trans rights. They're still getting married, having their children. The problem is governments have given up on a pro-natalist agenda. Governments have given up trying to support people to buy a house and have children. And this is now the biggest risk, because if you give people the equipment in which to perform their sort of, earthly duties as human beings, to propagate the species and live happily ever after, then there wouldn't be as much of a window for these sorts of arguments to come in and toxify everything. But, it's a twin head, really. People who want to go about their lives in normalcy are being increasingly finding that life difficult. They have to fight for everything, fight to buy a house, fight to get childcare, and fight against the sort of pervasive permissiveness that is being just, unfettered and imported from across the Atlantic. And at the same time, these sort of tiny niche movements are being fueled by algorithms on social media because they're clickbait, because they're so dramatic that people see them as existential crises, and so they get talked about far louder in small circles than they do. I mean, they're not really gripping the nation. But what is complex is what's happening to the generation below ours, because these are the people who do live their lives online and are increasingly being, for want of a better word, brainwashed. And when you look at the number of children reporting for gender dysphoria treatment and those sorts of things, and campaign groups actively trying to, like you said, promote certain adult fetishes in the classroom, then it's corrosive.
Or for example, imposing, telling, like, my daughter is going to be 4 years, literally, in 20 days, and she's going to start school in September, and I cannot imagine anybody comes up to her in a couple of years' time, 4 years' time, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, and start talking to her about, oh, gender this and gender that, and you can be this and you can be that. Like, this should not be allowed to be talked about in schools.
I mean, what's interesting is civilizations go through periods of flux, of small c conservatism to what looks like wild liberalism. And, if you were to Google what people looked like back in the 18th century, when we were the buccaneering Brits who took over a third of the world, the men all looked like, drag queens, essentially. They had powdered faces and beauty spots and massive wigs and bloomers and big frilly collars. That was the social norm back then. And you had very permissive periods. And then that snapped back in the Victorian era, where everyone became so obsessed with modesty, you even had to cover the legs of tables and chairs. And, you look back to the ancient Greeks and the Romans, they were hardly, moral Judeo-Christian societies. The Romans, they were the ones who bumped Jesus off, but they managed to build big empires. So societies go through this flux when it comes to what society should look like, and there's always been these nuances and changes, and around the world as well. You know, we haven't invented the trans movement. You have the Hijra community in Pakistan. You've got the ladyboys of Thailand. It's not some sort of 21st century modern day phenomenon at all. But I think that what will follow this period of expansiveness when it comes to social liberalism will be a natural contraction. I think actually we're already beginning to see it happen. If you look at the current teenagers, they are beginning to take on some, you know, pretty ultra-conservative viewpoints because they're so overwhelmed and intimidated by the world around them. So it is scary, but at the end of the day, when it comes to your child, they will be influenced by what they hear in the classroom and what they hear from by other children at school, and certainly what they see on the internet. You know, you've got all these different bases you need to cover to protect them now. But
100%. Because in that age, they want to be trendy, and if that's the trend, yeah.
But you will still be the biggest influence on their life.
Oh,
So
of course. Yeah. That's the case here. That's the case. I've also read somewhere else that in the U.S. even atheist parents, and this is very interesting, even atheist parents are considering going to church with their children just to balance the principle and values that they're affecting them. Now, I'm not sure how, you know, what's the percentage, how accurate is that, or all of that. But the end of the article said that expect the church industry to boom in the next 5 to 7 years, just because people want something to lean on, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of this is the industrialization of society meant that we kind of forgot about God a little bit, and God has always been, since we've become these thoughtful creatures who can write expansive philosophical texts, there's always been some sort of social fabric, usually unpinned by a belief system, whether that's Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, polytheism of Roman times. But we've kind of got rid of our belief systems, and our belief systems have increasingly been on technology, which is fallible because it's invented by humans. So, hopefully there will be a resurgence of the late, great JC, because he certainly was one of the best feminists on this planet.
Hopefully we'll see what happens, and yeah, I don't know, I just for you know, as a summary, I really wish the best for the UK, and I hope, you know, these coming is going to be way better than the one that passed. And yeah, but with that being said, you know, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. And if people needs to watch your show, it's 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. GB News, correct?
That's right, on TV, DAB radio, live streamed on YouTube, or you can catch up on our app.
That's the one. All right, with that being said, thank you so much, and we'll catch you later.
Cheers. Thanks, Tarek.
Thank you.